Sharon, it's so great to have you back. Have you missed us? We've missed you.
Desperately, I have. I'm not kidding, I have, really.
Since we last saw you, Ozzy's announced he's retiring from touring.
Yeah, that doesn't mean he's not going to be doing any shows. If there's a festival here and there that he wants to do, he will do that. But it's just long tours he won't do anymore. That's
good news for Ozzy fans, but is there any rumour? I've heard a rumour, a little one, that maybe a Vegas residency could be on the cards.
No,
Is it nice to be back in Blighty?
So lovely.
Is it?
Yeah, I miss it very much.
You feel like you're home now, do you?
Yeah,
That's
always.
really nice.
And then when I go back to America, I always feel like I'm on holiday. I never have felt, well, this is my home. I just feel like holiday time.
What is it what's the first thing that you do when you come back? Because the first thing, I mean, the few times I've been to America, I just want a good cup of tea.
Oh, yeah, I have my tea and my little sandwich and I'm in heaven.
Yes. Well, Sharon, we are so thrilled to have you back. She will be here. She's got her own residency here all week. And we'll find out a bit more about that Vegas rumour maybe a bit later on. Now, louts, litterers and laughing gas lovers. These are the targets of Rishi Sunak's £160 million crackdown on antisocial behaviour. Unveiling the plan earlier today, the PM said he was putting in practical steps that'll make a difference, including making fly tipping and graffiti punishable with fines of up to £1,000.
We need to make sure that we give antisocial behaviour the urgency that this subject deserves. So what we're going to do is use far more hotspot policing, where we make sure that our police target the areas that are of most concern. It's been proven to work in lots of different places. And we're going to have more use of what's called immediate justice, so that those people who are behaving irresponsibly and poorly will have to repair the damage they're causing, clear up the mess that they've made within days of that having been caught.
Well, Sunak aims to tackle begging and rough sleeping by giving police greater powers to move on those causing public distress by asking for money. He's also vowed to target organised begging networks. And in a controversial move, nitrous oxide or laughing gas will be criminalised, despite the UK's Drugs Advisory Board saying it shouldn't be. I do find this really weird. Why now, when we have discussed for months, years, the police have too much to do, there aren't enough of the police, the courts are clogged up, the jails are full, all these big problems with really violent crimes going completely unchecked. You know, 1% of rapes are getting investigated or coming to court. And you're really going to tie up the police with laughing gas, and you're going to make people who get a 30-second high from this laughing gas criminals. You're going to criminalise them.
But this is entirely political. It's not medical in the slightest. And, of course, the whole ridiculous thing about this, the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs is there to be advisory, and therefore it would make very good sense for the government to implement it. Now, they've got form. Successive governments have form where they actually ignore it. So, for example, cannabis has been reclassified. It went from, I think it went from B to C, then it went back into Group B again. And so, essentially, this is Rishi Sunak saying this is a big political priority and this is what the election will be won on.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Just before the election, when he was saying about we're going to do something about people that look down ladies' blouses. And then the lady, whatever her name was saying about up the skirt. And this is the same waffle.
Yeah.
But you know what? Don't you think, though, that it's sort of slightly appealing to people who hate litter? You know, I mean, we all hate litter bugs,
we
don't
do.
we?
Yeah. And we hate graffiti.
Yes, but we hate graffiti. Right, litter bugs. Well, there's also a whole load of litter. Cigarette butts, when did you last... Alcohol, cans of old alcohol, rubbish everywhere. When did you last see anybody being fined, even though you actually, I mean, I actually hand it back to them and say, I'm so sorry, I think you've just dropped this. You can see how well that goes most of the time. But also, you know, it's also those other problems which, like graffiti, you know, even if you challenge somebody who's actually doing the graffiti, as I have done in the past, why are you doing that? And they've said, Why do you care?
But you see, I think Daisy's point's really valid, which is nitrous oxide is a big problem from a litter point of view. So if they'd actually been honest about that and said, we want to tidy all of this up, make sure that it goes into the bins, to make sure that you scrub off graffiti, that there is justice, that would have been far more credible than actually then tying it up and saying we're going to criminalise another drug.
And I think, you know, successive governments or political parties are always doing opinion polls, and things like not being proud of your local area, your high street or your park looking a mess. These things always do come up. So they're trying to show that they're doing something about it. But, you know, if councils have their budgets slashed, which they've had to have done, and it, you know, goes right back to austerity, those are the things that are you're going to have, you know, messy, untidy parks and high streets.
Yeah, I don't think NOS, nitrous, whatever you want to call it, I don't think it's that big a deal. But in fairness to the government, it is this whole broken windows theory of you let the people do the small crimes, it leads to bigger crimes. I think there's something in that, because where I live, where you've been, Hackney, there's some parks that I will go to with my kid because they're nice and safe, and there's other parks where people are walking their dogs in them, even though it says no dogs allowed, and there's nitrous capsules on the floor.
Exactly.
And all that does then is makes that area now uninhabitable for people like me who want to go there with their kids. And then that area stays being the bad one, and it attracts even more bad people and more bad actions in that same space. So there is a point, I think.
No, I totally agree with the zero tolerance thing, but I think he's conflating it and saying we're going to make it illegal is a little bit of a red herring. It's actually about making sure the environment is clean, and that zero tolerance is really important.
How can you arrest someone for sucking something that makes cakes, you said?
Well, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Well, of course it's ridiculous, and how the police don't have time to do that. We know how many crimes are going unsolved. There aren't enough police. Also, we don't have enough police on the streets generally.
But they could say, I'm taking this home because my mum's making a cake. And what are they going to say? You're a liar.
Well, and actually, we're slightly getting sidetracked, but just in case people are wondering, the little silver canisters that certainly around anyone that lives in a city will see them all over the pavement. They are, as Sharon was just saying, they are sold officially because the squirty cream or, you know, professional chefs use them to make sort of mousses and stuff like that. But so they're not going to be allowed to buy them anymore.
Well, no, so there is an exception for them to buy it. And how are you going to police that?
Oh, they'll need a license.
You'll need a licence. So are you making a cake, in which case you're allowed to have these? If you're not, if you're going to the park, you can't have them. No. I mean, it's a nonsense, isn't it?
A licence for whipping cream. Lovely. Now, from petty crimes to more serious offences, celebs, the super rich and people who just love a bit of bling are living in fear of Rolex rippers. Gangs who stalk potential victims online before stealing their watches. The most coveted designs can fetch up to £500,000, and thieves can sell them on quickly on the black market. There's also a certain cachet to nicking such big-ticket items. 2 men from such gangs were caught after detectives found pictures of them posing with the stolen wristwear. Absolute idiots. High-profile cases are common. Former boxer Amir Khan was robbed at gunpoint for his diamond-encrusted watch after leaving a restaurant with his wife last year. Other victims include Mark Cavendish, who had 2 watches stolen from his house, worth a total of £700,000, and Michael McIntyre was mugged for his £15,000 Rolex. Sharon, you've experienced something similar?
Yeah. We've been robbed 4 times, but this situation is that now, I only know in America, but there are gangs that they train these kids about the watches. They all go out with pictures of these watches.
Like a catalogue?
Yeah. One of the kids has got binoculars. They do it in the daytime as well as night. And they'll look at restaurants where people sit outside and they'll see which watch. They'll go up with a gun, put it to your head, take the watch and go.
Wow.
One time this happened, the guy, when they put the gun to his head, fought. And so there was this big fight in this restaurant going over tables, and then unfortunately somebody was shot. They didn't die, but somebody at another table got shot. And so they do it, you know, during the afternoon.
So it's literally like Fagin and Oliver Twist.
But with guns.
But with guns, yeah.
And I assume
Crazy.
it's in particular locations, high-end restaurants, that kind of thing.
High-end restaurants where you can sit outside, because since COVID, every restaurant you can sit outside now. So, you know, it's easy pickings.
But there's only going to be a solution, isn't there, when you actually make it so that, for example, if each one had a, I don't know, something that embedded in it.
A tracking device or whatever.
Or whatever. I'm just saying that, you know, the only problem is that they're easily portable. As you said, they're carried by people who are, you know, high profile. So therefore, you know, you're going to know where they are because there's a whisper about people going on. I mean, it is.
There are so many elements to this, aren't there? Because there's the fact that they're sort of checking social media to see who's got these really, really expensive watches, and then, as Sharon said, and then going and finding them, either finding that individual or finding somebody who's wearing these watches. There is also this trend of ridiculously expensive watches. I mean, Mark Cavendish having £700,000 on 2 watches. It's kind of crazy, and I am really sympathetic, obviously, to the victims and having any sort of robbery, particularly.
Yes, exactly. If you've got the money, why not?
Yeah.
You can spend your money on whatever
how you
want.
like.
So
I was in a car. I was with my friend Marcel Somerville. He's a reality TV star. We went to a celebrity party full of celebrities. We left the party to go to a restaurant around the corner. And the 10-minute drive from the party to the restaurant, we were accosted by 2 mopeds. The guys pulled out machetes and started... Yeah, this is me and Marcel. Actually, the same night we went out. So he had about £150,000 watch on. It was a Patek Philippe. And these machete guys are swinging their things at the window. And we just drove off. But in London, you're kind of expecting this thing and you're kind of used to it.
But doesn't this go back to a much bigger issue, which is we don't see enough police on the streets? We spoke about that to begin with. 2 million unsolved crimes. We know that 90% of burglaries aren't actually solved. And we know that if you have high-profile policing, it cuts crime or violent crime by as much as 70 to 80%. So isn't that the answer, to make sure that we have visible policing and get them away from the
There
desks?
is that. And I completely agree with all of you saying, you can spend your money on what you want and you can do what you want. But isn't it actually really dangerous to go out with a £500,000 watch on your wrist? I mean, it's if any friend of mine did that, I would be begging them not to do that.
But you can say that about anything. Is it dangerous to drive a very expensive car? Is it dangerous to have a house with lots of expensive possessions inside of it?
But these watches are so easy to steal. That's the reason why it's happening so much. A car is harder to steal and harder to sell. These are easy to steal and easy to sell.
I think for me, if you could afford to have £700,000 on 2 watches, then you should be able to wear it in a society where it's quite civil for you to walk around.
Of course you should be able to.
Where do you draw the line? Yeah.
I'm not saying I would outlaw it. I'm just saying that if it was somebody I cared about, I would just be begging them not to do it because I'd be so worried about them.
But what's the point of having them if you can't wear them?
Yeah.
I know. So I just would never buy one if I had the money. I just wouldn't.
buy a piece of art.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah?